doing today is to do something in plusquamperfect, or past in the past. So the piece I'm singing today is taken down, not composed, but taken down by a 12th century poet, right, who happens to be also a composer. When he was traveling in the central south area of China, he went to hiking the mountain, and the mountain was supposed to be a sacred site for pilgrimage, and was important in the imperial sort of state cults to legitimize, its control over the entire Chinese territories. And upon one peak of that mountain, there's a shrine dedicated to, basically the god of this territory. And our poet went there not to worship any deity, but he was like a tourist. And he searched the archives or bookshelf of that shrine, and he found some sort of medieval music scores. So in my discipline, we tend to set the medieval period of China between the 3rd century and the 10th century, right? And our poet lives in the 12th century. So it's arguably late imperial or early modern according to some people, because they believe at that time, they had some new ideas like nationality, new currency system, new state organization. Let's put it on the side. So for the poet himself, right, he found lost music, right? So, and among those lost music, there was this piece titled "The Feather Skirt," which is a legendary piece that's connected to the collapse of the Tang Empire, right, which lasted from the 600s to the 900s, right? And the peak of the empire was roughly in the 700s, when there was this emperor called Xuanzong, or some people say he's illustrious, like splendid emperor. He brought this empire to its heyday, but he was then very decadent, right? And a Sogdian general rebelled and made the empire collapse. And why is this song important? So according to two versions of records, all right, this song came about in different ways. According to anecdotal accounts, right, the emperor had a dream in which he visited a mysterious mountain where he witnessed a performance of this song. So when he woke up, he took it down, right, and made this into a court piece, right? I guess this tale is to sort of make him like half deity, right? And in official records, in a more sober version of history, it's said that he imported music from Central Eurasia, wholesale, right? And among the pieces, there's one titled Brahman, like the Indian sort of caste, right? Brahman. And he liked that piece so much, and he sort of adapted that, changed a bit, because the emperor himself was a very great musician, and retitled that Feather Skirt Dance. And feather skirt, well, you may call it feather undergarment, like dressing, represents some sort of lightness, loftiness, right? Because feather we fly, right? And he used that music as a liturgical sort of performance for Taoist ceremonies, because the emperor himself took advantage of Taoism as not state religion, but his source of legitimacy, right? He considered himself descendant of Taoist deities, whatever, but people not necessarily believing in that. But that's what he used, and that gave this song, right, a very legendary sort of status. And if you look at the title, it's weird. It has chord section, whatever. That's because when he adopted Brahman, or wrote down the dream revealed song, right? He made the song into a chord sort of format, right? Which is termed the Grand Concerto, right? And the Tang Dynasty Grand Concerto would consist of three main overture in which the instruments would take turn, right, and play the themes. And the middle part, when it becomes more rhythmic, right, and singing, right, a chorus or individual singers will come in, and it has a coda in which the music gets more faster, right, and dancers will come in, right. So when our poet in the 12th century, right, reading this supposedly 8th century song, right, the number of the pieces was already different from the records. So he has never heard the song before. He only knew there's record of the existence of this piece of music, right? So he was like, oh, whatever, it's something antiquarian, so we like it, right? And maybe he didn't bring paper to that, mountain shrine. So he only took down like this section. So the first motive from the core, part of what he saw, right? And because he only had music instead without words, so he said, why don't I just compose something, right? Because I'm also a poet, I'm also an awesome writer. And at that time, he was, I guess, 30 years old, in 1183, if I'm correct. And he already feels himself like a loser, basically. So back then, for a person like him, a literatus, right, he's supposed to study hard, take civil service examination, and serve in the government, right, and get emoluments from imperial government. But he never had the fortune to accomplish this. So he had to basically serve as playmates of aristocratic people, right, to keep his sort of status, right, and just be involved, right, in the mainstream culture, right. So he had to constantly travel around for patronage, right. So the content of the poem sort of reflects what he thinks his life was. All right. May I have a volunteer to hold the score for my guitarist, Vanessa?
It's fine.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yes, we're an ensemble,
Thank you.
so I won't be needing this microphone. And, I just want to add a note. The song itself is based on the poet's, poetic collection, which happens to also include the music notes, right? The music notation, right? Only like 17-ish songs had notes on the side, and since the 1930s, attempts have been made to decipher what those are, because that was also the system was also lost, right? And there are different theories of how to reconstruct the music, and basically the notes are just a skeleton, right? Or like if you're writing a paper, outline, right? So you need to fill in the blanks, right? And this is sort of my best attempt, right, to make sense of the music. And it's in Mixolydian mode. If you're familiar with the Western church music, right, from the medieval times, right? Mixolydian is one of the most widely used, and it's not the Chinese term, although there's an equivalent. Yeah, I just want you to have prepare you, right? And this may not sound that familiar to your ears, because in Mixolydian there's a blue note, right? The seventh is flat, right? And I'll try my best to make that salient. Okay. All right. Let's hear it.